Yeah. Still. Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Punjabi Hari Radha Punjabi Hari Hari Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladevi Mai Subhadra Jaya Shrimadbhagavatam Jaya Bhalagopal Jaya Shrimadbhagavatam Jaya Jai Govardhan Jaya Gurani Jaya Jaya Gurani Jaya Jaya Gurani Jaya Jaya Gurani Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Shrimadbhagavatam Sabadivradikacharya Astoda Satashishimada's Divine Grace, founder of Iskana Bhai, Charnadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki, their most merciful Lordship, Shri Shri Hari Ki, Shri Jagannath, Shri Baladev Mai Subhadra Ki, Shri Nathaji, Shri Balagopal Ki, Shri Varnitai Ki, Nitai Go Prema. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the Lord, Spirit of Shri Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. There are some really heavy statements in the 5th canto about family life. I wanted to read, but I lost the place here, and I don't want to spend too much time going there, but keep my marker. We're reading Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devam saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudire Nasta praishu badreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke Bhaktir bhagavati naishtiki. Reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 33. Amayo Yas Cha Bhutanam Amayo Yas Cha Bhutanam Jayate Vena Suvrata Jayate Yena Suvrata Jai Tad Eva Hi Amayam Dravyam Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam Na Punati Chikitsitam Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Jayate Yena Suvrata Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Jayate Yena Suvrata Jayate Yena Suvrata Jayate Yena Suvrata Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam Na Punati Chikitsitam Na Punati Chikitsitam. Please, yeah. Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Jayate Yena Suvrata Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Jayate Yena Suvrata Tadeva Hi Amayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam Amaya diseases Yacha whatever Bhutanam of the living being Jayate become possible Yena by the agency Suvrata O good soul Tat that Eva very He certainly Amayam disease Dravyam thing Na does it not Punati cure Chiksitam treated with.
Amayo yashta bhutanam jayate yena shubrata tareva yamayam dravyam napunati chikitsitam.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Charnananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. An expert physician, O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing. Purport by His Divine Grace of Charnananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. An expert physician treats his patient with a therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparations sometimes cause disorders in the bowels. But the very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized. Just as by fire, iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. The best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. Everything is an emanation from the Supreme Spirit. And by His inconceivable power, He can convert spirit into matter and matter into spirit. Therefore, a material thing, so-called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. The necessary condition for such a change is to employ so-called matter in the service of the Spirit. That is the way to treat our material diseases and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane, where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that, quote, everything is Brahman, is thus realized by us. Om Jnana Timirandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshusun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Everything is Brahman, is realized by us. Everything is Brahman, meaning everything that is an emanation coming from the divine body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what we see is His external manifestation of that. This that I've been reading about Jed Bharat's life, which reveals how he became a deer, seems to me to be very pertinent to this age, because so many people have pets, even devotees have taken pets, into their lives.
And Jud Bharat is giving a warning here, because just by having a deer as a pet caused him, even though he was Brahman, to have to take birth as the same kind of deer he kept caring for. You see, the same way we put ourselves under the submission of our minds, which is to the greatest extent being controlled by our experiences of the senses with the external Brahman, the external energy of Krishna. And so only going by that, we can only get the result that produces. This is why we have to take part in devotional service to be able to know what the spiritual energy is. Now, what has happened now, Jud Bharat has gone from being a deer to now taking birth as a human again. But by his realizing that it was his attachment to anything in this world, he became what is called an avadhuta. You probably know what an avadhuta is, right? An avadhuta is one who is so removed in consciousness from the material world that he seems to be totally dysfunctional in some regards. Sometimes avadhutas will go naked. They won't eat, or they cry for reasons unknown. So many things they reveal. So Jud Bharat, though, having remembered his previous birth, he did everything he could to stay out of the control of the material energy. And so he went off and lived in the woods and the forest as a hermit. But as such, just sitting in one place meditating, then a king came by, and his palanquin carriers, they needed somebody else to help them carry the palanquin. So the king has them go get Jud Bharat. He's real strong, right? So they go get Jud Bharat. But Jud Bharat's worried about stepping on the ants. So he's carrying the palanquin, but he's carrying it like this. You know? Oh, God, I don't want to step on any ants, you know. So the king, what's going on here? And the other servants that were accustomed to taking orders from the king, they said, this guy we picked up, he's something wrong. He's not carrying properly. He's jumping all over.
Excuse me, Captain, what number is this? 5 what?
This is 5, chapter 10.
5:10.
Right around there.
5:10:33.
5:10 to 14. Oh no, you're talking about the one we're doing today.
No.
The one I'm talking about, Jud Bharat. Yeah, that's in Canto 5, chapter 10. But the previous chapter is about his deer and all that too, and chapter 9, chapter 8 goes into those too. But here, Sukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit about this story of Jud Bharat. O Maharaj Parikshit, when King Rahugana chastised the exalted devotee Jud Bharat with harsh words, this is the king that he's carrying the palanquin on, right? That peaceful, saintly person tolerated it all and replied properly. Nescience is due to the bodily conception, and Jud Bharat was not affected by this false conception. Out of his natural humility, he never considered himself a great devotee, and he agreed to suffer the results of his past karma. Like an ordinary man, he thought that by carrying the palanquin, he was destroying the reactions of his past misdeeds. Thinking in this way, he began to carry the palanquin as before. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O best of the Pandu dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, the king of the Sindhu and Sarobhir states Maharaj Rahugana, had great faith in discussions of the absolute truth. Being thus qualified, he heard from Jad Bharat that philosophical presentation which is approved by all scriptures on the mystic yoga process and which slackens the knot in the heart, his material conception of himself as a king was thus destroyed. He immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat on the ground with his head on the lotus feet of Jad Bharat, in such a way that he might be excused for his insulting words against the great Brahman. He then prayed as follows. So see, even though this king was seemingly in a position of superiority, and here this Jad Bharat he's seemingly just like a bum, out in the woods, a dacoit, like anybody else would think he was. But here he comes speaking this profound, explaining to the king that he's not the body, and the person he's thinking himself to be as a king is only a temporary situation. Right. And he can be returned to an animal at any time. And then the king recognized it. See, in this day and age, such profound teachings are not necessarily recognized by even people that should be, as leaders, recognizing such spiritual truths. So this limits the preacher's ability to be able to communicate with these people. If they don't want spiritual knowledge, then their minds will do everything they can to block it out. Yeah. In this day and age, that's to a great extent what is taking place. And it's sad because they limit themselves. So we have what's looked at as mass, what can you say? Mass hypnotism. You ever heard of mass hypnotism? Where everybody is hypnotized.
Herd mentality.
Yeah. To a great extent, this is actually what's happening in the material world. Yeah. You see that, right? Uh-huh. And everything we're being taught as far as what right from wrong is concerned. Right. It's adjustable according to time and circumstance, and when applied to the activities engaged in for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, things are upside down. Like you walk in, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Mm-hmm. And yet in our kitchen, wearing shoes is unclean. Mm-hmm. That's why we go barefoot in the kitchen. We're supposed to clean our feet before we go into the kitchen, which in most temples as well, before you enter the temple, you're supposed to wash your feet. Because just like Jad Bharat's trying to avoid the ants, so many other things die on the street.
Birds die. That thing in the bathroom is for?
We walk in the, what is it?
That thing in that bathroom, is that what that's for, to scrape your feet off?
No. I don't think so.
You have to put water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't have. But see, at the door, normally, in India, right at the door, there's a faucet. Put your feet under, you turn the faucet on, turn it off. Or there's a pitcher bowl. We could put the pitcher bowl up. But Krishna is so merciful in this day and age. This is why, even in preaching centers, when we have deities of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, because they are allowing, for the sake of preaching, when Krishna normally is worshipped, there's a schedule and there's a set amount of offerings that go on, right? But for the sake of preaching, then everything else becomes secondary, you could say. So, for the sake of distributing books and Harinam, that's why, see, America has laws that they follow. Each city has its specific laws that they follow. Sometimes you can turn right on red, some cities you can't. And so, similarly in Krishna consciousness, depending on what activity you're performing, we follow normally the laws of man. But in order to engage in Krishna's service, I think I've explained before, we would go in, we would say, working with the kitchen, right? We're working with the kitchen. It's not really a lie. Most devotees, if they cut up, if they ever cut up, if they ever prepare foods for Krishna, they work in the kitchen, right? So, they would let us in. And by that very means, we would be able to preach to people and take donations. So, in a sense, it's breaking a law. But in another sense, it's not really doing anyone any harm. And we weren't going in there for the reason people were being charged anyway. We were going in there to take money out, not bring money in. But see, in that manner, what is called agata sukriti is that people engage in Krishna's service and they don't even know it. They give $1, $5, $10, depending on what super soul would impress upon them to give. And the more you could tap into the super soul in their heart you could find, the more they would want to help out, you know. And it was a great experience that I didn't get by any other experience in my whole life. I've engaged in, you know, telephone, selling, salesmanship, and stuff like that. But nothing that I have ever engaged in was the equivalent of what book distribution allows you the experience of. And knowing how Krishna's wanting to reach out to everyone in the world, to give this truth to them. This is why he has empowered Srila Prabhupada to give us these teachings and to make it so clear to us that these are coming from the original word-for-word translations from the very writings of Veda Vyasa. The words spoken by Veda Vyasa himself, put into the written form by Sri Ganesh, son of Lord Shiva, spoken by Sukadeva Goswami as well, spoken as well by Sudha Goswami, heard by those who are qualified to hear, the sages at Namashranya. So, in my opinion, my experience has been with devotees that really want to get a good foundation on Krishna consciousness. Any way they can to jump into this book distribution is going to get you grounded more firmly in this philosophy than anything else. Probably even more even than reading the books, giving the books, and engaging the souls in Krishna's service. But we can't take away from the need for us to read the books as much as possible. Books are, Srila Prabhupada said, the basis by which to continue expanding the movement. The basis, expanding the movement is the basis by which mundane souls and how can you say, imprisoned and controlled by the three modes of material energy, controlling the mind that most human beings are giving themselves the facility of being controlled by. So the Shrimadbhagavatam frees the soul who finds in themselves the desire to want to know God, the desire to want to know about God, the desire to know about what God is doing, where God is, how does he live, how is he taking part in his daily activities. And then by giving that knowledge to others, we give the greatest gift this human form of life has to be able to experience. And so Krishna takes it as well as an act by the soul who engages in that activity as a very dear act towards him. Because, being out on the street with a book bag and having books, and then this breaks some of the societal laws as well. Can't do that anymore, even in Kmart's parking lot. But it is a religious function. As a devotee, one of our functions, our religious rights, we could say, in the United States, is to practice our function is that the disciple goes out and collects on behalf of the guru. So this helps the guru expand the temple, publish more books, pay for the maintenance, keep the devotees taken care of. So all these things that the guru would engage the funds that the disciples gather for him is that which will further the promotion of that which liberates the spiritual souls. And the more you want to liberate someone else, the more you're going to find yourself liberated in this present life. In this present life. Because what leaves us is the fear of death. When you read over and over again how much Sri Krishna himself is promising, you'll never have to take birth again in the material universe. That's a powerful statement made by God himself. He's the one who's in control of everything.
Right.
So I'd like to do everything I can to file in line with those instructions. So maybe we are confined, but every time someone does come here, if they haven't been enough exposed to the movement to know how valuable the books are, we can do everything we can to help them realize how valuable the knowledge in these books are. And I'm sure if you are reading every day, you're finding yourself how true it is, how valuable these verses are, every verse. When you think about it and reflect on every one of these verses, and in fact, as we discuss them and we see how much meaning there is in each and every one of these verses, they contain so profound statements that you can meditate on one verse the whole day long and not be yet filled with the totality of the confidential information that each verse contains. Krishna's words out of his own mouth are so powerful. And if we take them as ordinary statements, we won't get the fullness. So that's the problem with people taking these books like ordinary books. So they feel as though they can take them or leave them. But the difference when leaving their bodies can very well be determined by whether they took it or left it. Because if the book, by reading the book and allowing the book to bring the realization that it is truths that we have in our makeup, that these books, these revelations of Krishna himself, in the makeup of the soul. Just imagine if the soul was in perfect relation with Krishna, it would have in its storehouse of memory a remembrance of everything we've ever done with Krishna. How sweet that would be. That's what we can be restored to, though, to those sweet experiences we had. When you looked upon Mahavishnu to get here, you had some desire to see God. You had some desire, knowing that God could fulfill your desire. So, on the one hand, looked at it from that perspective, then we may not have come here for Krishna's pleasure, but now that we find ourselves here, we can from now on conduct ourselves in a way that will be pleasing to Krishna. And that's what the books are getting us to do. Why occupy ourselves with all these mundane activities that will only produce the fruits of the world, the mundane exterior energy of Krishna? As this verse brings out, I am that, we are that external energy. The soul is immersing itself by being contained in this body, in the external energy of Krishna. That's what we are in. That's the soul entrenched in the external energy of Krishna. So, chanting gives the soul the ability to know and experience the internal energy of Krishna. Yeah. And we can have it all day long. We can have it all day long. We can be filled with love of God. Not just a little bit. We can be filled with love of God. And if that's our goal in life, that will be the reward of life. Wow. Full of love of God, Krishna. And with that comes the satisfaction that anything else we think is as great, beyond what anything else could ever offer us the pleasure of. Imagine. And being in that state of consciousness constantly, a state of bliss. I'm not getting that myself yet, but I know it's available. And I know what I see in the exalted souls. We put these souls on the altar, and we may see them as having a place here in this material world, functioning as servants of Krishna here, but they have eternal rasas, relationship with Krishna now, and are also performing pastimes, lila, with Krishna. So these are not ordinary souls that are on the altar. That's why I see when these names were put, there was a lot of collection that went on to have this Shrimadbhagavatam temple built, construction. You can imagine how much it would take to totally empty that out of water.
Where?
Right here, the temple, not the Dwar, where Srinathji is. It's said to be a separate temple. There's two temples in one, right? Nathadwar and Devasiddhana Mandir. So, but in order to acknowledge the appreciation, Arvind Bhai, the temple president at the time, you might see him here from time to time, kind of tall devotee. He has a couple of sons. I'm not sure if he has any daughters. But he agreed to put the pictures on the wall, I suspect, and the names on the altar. In my mind, and Chaitanya Rupa as well, you can't buy yourself a name on the altar, no matter how much you contribute. The founder Acharya is one thing, but he's founder Acharya by Krishna's, what we were talking about, appointed, right? Appointment. Krishna appointed Srila Prabhupada to take that position. But when we give a donation, we shouldn't think of that donation in and of itself as qualifying us of anything. You know what I mean? There's a difference. And we, as followers and learners, disciples mean one who is taking discipline from someone else, who's more advanced. So we put ourselves in the position of student to Srila Prabhupada's superior position as founder and acharya. Means he's the teacher. But then they give credit to people as being acharya. That's not right. You can't become acharya by a donation to a temple. And so, Actually, in my mind, that should even be covered with a cloth, those names. Maybe once a year, in acknowledgement, we have a day of celebration for everyone that's ever contributed anything to the temple. But see, devotees are out right now, worldwide. There are at least thousands of devotees out in the general publics of their nation, making contact with people who have never heard of Krishna before, and being out there on the front lines, giving the nectar they have found of the Supreme Person's relationship with them to everyone they come in contact with. And in so doing, they're establishing that profound eternal relationship with Krishna that will offer the most sweet nectar to be experienced, that this movement that I've seen, because I've been cooking, I've been cleaning, did pots, preached, did different things. But this book distribution, there is nothing like it. Wow. Nothing that pleases Srila Prabhupada more. Wow. And that's ultimately our aim. If we can please the Guru, even the first Guru I had, who was in an ultimate state, when he told me, everything you've done has been pleasing to Krishna. So it's hard to describe the feeling that gives you in your heart to know that those years you've spent doing the act that you felt would be pleasing to Krishna, that his own disciple tells you that's what Srila Prabhupada is pleased with, then it grounds you in this movement. It grounds you in your relationship with Srila Prabhupada. It grounds you in your love for Krishna, having given such opportunity to people who otherwise would never have been able to find an opportunity to serve. If Srila Prabhupada hadn't brought Krishna here, I'd be a Christian somewhere probably, and not realizing what that meant even.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
My story, exactly.
Yeah, I would. And then to speak, if I hadn't gone into Christianity, I'd be a drunk somewhere, maybe homeless, I don't know. I held for a long time a reputation of, attending work solidly, steady every day. Any job I ever had, any job I ever left from, I always gave notice, Tried to follow all the laws regularly. After I got out of my young teenage years, but as a teenager, boy, I was a bad dude. Terrible.
Did you have any God consciousness?
What is it?
Did you have any God consciousness?
As a teenager, no.
But
Not
you
until
don't
21.
about God.
Not until 21.
Not until 21.
Yeah, 1971.
Okay,
I was
that's
21.
Okay.
Yeah. See, my friend, when we used to smoke pot, I used to have a friend that I smoked with. He said, "We can go find God in church while we're smoking pot." I said, "Boy, that's the craziest thing I ever heard of." But now, as I've come to see from a different perspective how wholeheartedly Krishna sees the consciousness people develop. So now I can separate him from those, my friends, that just go out and get stoned, just to be uncontrolled and have experiences of the mind that was just so out of the world. So there's a difference. So with a person developing the consciousness with whatever they want to do, see, and that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying here, even in the world, normally a renunciate, like Judge Barra, he doesn't want to have anything to do with anything in this material world that will cause him to create the desire or the longing for it or the attachment to it, right? Because he knows what these attachments cause. But Srila Prabhupada brings out, and even amongst his God brothers, see, there is the idea that he flew away from India. The farther west you go from India, it is spoken of by the scriptures. The more fallen you are. Wow. So if you go to the west coast, the left coast, it's about as far away as you can get, because you go to the other ocean, then you're almost in India there.
Wow. Further you go from the east,
The further west you go from India, from the east,
the further you go from the east, the more fallen it is.
Yeah.
Or that's deep.
See, now that we're talking about that, then I just get the realization of Christopher Columbus. But actually, he said he was going in the opposite direction in order to get to the same direction, right? Mm-hmm. See, in the universe, there's direction also. But if we're not reminded of it through the day, we don't even think of our relationship to it, to the rest of the universe. And that's why 3 times a day the Brahmin chants Gayatri and remembers ourselves. We're always under Brahma. Highest spot in the universe, the sun. And the sun is somewhere in the middle of his body, I believe. But we're always under him. And even we get to higher planets, he's the highest place in the universe. But then, when you get to the so-called lowest place in the universe, it can also be thought of as the highest place in the universe, because no matter where you point from the sun, up is the lowest place in the universe. So the highest is the lowest. Lowest becomes the highest if you're in the highest.
Relativity.
If you're on the sun and you're pointing to the innermost lining of the universe, which is the outer covering of the universe, right? If you're on the sun, any way you point is to that outer lining of the universe, right? Which is also the lowest point in the universe. So it's the lowest point, unless you're at the highest point, then it's the highest. You see that paradox? It's strange the way the universe even is. It's a mysterious situation. All glory to Shrimadbhagavatam. Any comments? Any questions? Any
So much. Yeah, isn't that great?
Was that an hour?
Isn't that crazy? You know, by in 5 minutes.
You talking about relativity and we put in time. Real weird.
Give me my pen.
Yeah. John, any questions? Any comments? No?
No, that was fantastic, bro. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you say that. I feel as though I'm failing in reaching the spiritual.
No, not at all.
It's a continuous process.
Yes, it is. It's a continuous.
It ain't something that